When I started meditating using apps like Headspace and Waking Up, I received some real tangible benefits from negative emotions like anxiety. But there was still something sort of subtly missing. I felt like I couldn't really translate my meditative experience over to my day-to-day life. And I sort of felt that that was only attainable by people or monks meditating in the foothills of the Himalayas for 365 days of the year for 12 hours a day. However, I recently took upon reading the masterful book called Mindfulness, A Practical Guide to Awakening by Joseph Goldsteins. And it's exactly as it sounds. It's a no BS guide on how we can really implement the teachings from the Satipatthana Sutta, one of the foundational suttas the Buddha gave on how to practice mindfulness. Joseph shows us through his 50 plus years of meditative experience and teaching in the Vipassana style tradition of meditation, how we can actually put these mindfulness techniques into practice in our day-to-day lives. So prior to getting into the tips, first we need a little bit of context. It may be first helpful to understand why we could use the Satipatthana Sutta in the first place for implementing mindfulness into our lives. In my case, I've come from a background of Western skepticism, and as a graduate of biomedical science, using a Buddhist framework for deepening our mindfulness practice was something that put up a lot of red flags for me. However, as Jack Kornfield puts it, and I want to read from him here, the point of Buddhism is not to make you a Buddhist, so spare your friends and family of calling yourself one. More so, it's an invitation about awakening the Buddha nature within you, meaning that we are all truly capable of achieving liberation of our minds. The Buddha really says that he teaches one thing: suffering and its end. So with that in mind, the prospect of using the Satipatthana Sutta as a framework of practice in my own life really seemed relatively rational to me. So with that out of the way, here are two main takeaways that I've gotten from the book Mindfulness, A Practical Guide to Awakening by Joseph Goldsteins that I hope you can implement into your life to embed your mindfulness practice. Now, tip number one is continuity of mindfulness. Now, this may sound very simple, but its importance cannot be understated. We'll look at the practical aspect in a second, but we first need a little bit of context here. Unfortunately, partially from the way that meditation is marketed here in the West, we tend to think that meditation is strictly limited just to our meditation sits. However, this really could not be further from the truth. Now, this took so long to detonate on me, and it took until after my second 10-day silent meditation retreat to actually really start taking this seriously, continuity of mindfulness. As the teacher S.N. Goenka says, who runs the silent meditation 10-day retreats all across the world, Vipassana meditation is really a way of life, and we should take that advice heedfully at risk of missing out on tremendous amount of benefit from the practice. And I agree completely. The sooner you start taking your meditation practice seriously moment to moment in your day-to-day life, your practice will skyrocket. So how does this actually work? Well, in the book, Joseph Goldsteins says, whatever we repeatedly practice begins to arise more and more spontaneously. At this point, mindfulness arises by itself. So how can we actually go about doing this practically? Well, there's really a variety of ways we can do about it, but what I'm going to suggest to you is that you make the goal to pay attention to the most predominant sensory experience, moment to moment, without falling into the story of thought playing out in your head. So for example, noting seeing of people walking by, or the gentle sound of waves coming in, or the coolness of water running over your feet, or the lingering taste of wine left over from the beach picnic you had, or even the smell of sea spray as you walk along the beach. Whatever becomes most predominant moment to moment without getting lost in thought. Or even more specifically, just picking one sensory experience in particular and making that your focus. For example, I've found the pressure in my feet when walking to be a very, very useful anchor in mindfulness. So if maintaining continuity in mindfulness throughout the day is difficult for you, don't fret, because most of the people in the world do not maintain mindfulness throughout the day. This is no easy task. You're rewiring your brain basically. So what I would suggest is taking 10 minutes out of your day, setting an alarm or I know my friend Jackson has a watch that buzzes to cue him in to be mindful. But take 10 minutes to really take that time to be mindful of the sensory experiences that are going on. So when I did this, I did it in my tea breaks at work, where I took 10 minutes, just cued with the intention into my mind, okay, I'm just going to switch off from all technology, go for a walk and be mindful. So like I said, I would feel sensations in my feet, warmth of the sun on me, the breeze on my skin, just listening to the rustling of leaves as wind blew it around in the trees, or birds chirping. Just paying really close attention, and that really helped to propel my continuity moment to moment. But just as a yardstick, know that the more that you can practice mindfulness moment to moment, the better. So always be trying to implement it throughout your day whenever you can remember to. And as Joseph Goldsteins says, from the repeated effort to be mindful in the moment, there comes a time when the flow of mindfulness happens effortlessly for longer periods of time. Okay guys, so if you're finding this video useful so far, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like or a comment if you feel so inclined. It just helps out the YouTube algorithm to help my channel get discovered and give more people value. So that would be greatly appreciated. Okay, on to tip number 2. Okay, so tip number 2 is skillful speech. Now, it may sound a little bit peculiar to recommend skillful speech as an object of mindfulness meditation, but this might not come as a surprise, but we speak a lot as social animals. So as Bhikkhu Bodhi puts it, skillful speech's ultimate purpose is not so much ethical as it is spiritual and aids in mental purification. Therefore, its importance cannot be underestimated. Speech is also super important because it conditions our relationships, our minds, and future consequences that play out for us. And if we're not mindful, it really is a massive reaffirmer of self, which contradicts our practice of Vipassana meditation or mindfulness in general. So even more than that, if one is so inclined to entertain Buddhist frameworks, we have the 10 unwholesome actions. Now, 4 of these are actually tied to speech. So it really plays a big part in the Buddhist framework for cultivating a wholesome mind state. So given that we speak so much, and with all that context out of the way, what can we actually do to practically use speech as a meditative object? Okay, so let's first take a look at telling the truth. So telling the truth is really our stand at being in reality rather than illusion. So we can go about this by paying attention to even really small falsehoods that come up in our lives. So little alarm bells should be going off anytime you lie or say something exaggerated that isn't a portrayal of the truth. And really be cueing yourself to assess the motivation behind it. So why am I saying these things? Is it out of fear? Is it out of anger? Is it out of jealousy or desire? It's really useful to use mindfulness to assess our motive. So when we're willing to open up to our lies and see what's really going on, it actually opens us up to be more able and capable of refraining from lying in the future. Because if we just tissue it over and, oh, I don't lie, I'm perfect in every way, then we're not really opening up the doorway for self-improvement through mindfulness that we can really be benefiting from. So practice with clear comprehension whenever you lie, whenever you catch yourself, even if it's in retrospect. What is my motive? Why am I lying here? And take a stand in living in reality rather than delusion. So another really useful facet of skillful speech that we can use mindfulness and deepen our practice with is paying attention to useless speech. Now I love the Pali word for this. It's called sampapalapa, which I find hilarious. But basically, when we actually reflect on a lot of the time we speak that doesn't really have any use, say we're in conversation with a friend and we're just throwing out words, we're basically asserting our presence. Here I am, me, right? Which is very self-referential and against the grain of our practice. So the Buddha speaks of it this way. He says, one speaks at the right time in accordance with the facts, speaks what is useful. One's speech is like a treasure uttered at the right moment, accompanied by reason, moderate and full of sense. So this is a powerful yardstick that we can refer to. So not only does useless speech serve as a self-referential pathology to our mindfulness practice, but it also generates unspoken disrespect from other people, when we're just constantly vomiting out words and just saying whatever's on our mind without refraining and taking our time and saying what is useful. Just reflect on some people in your own life. A lot of the time, the people you look up to are those who use speech in a way that is very commanding, only speaking what is necessary and compassionate and meaningful in that moment, rather than just spewing out words. Now, in the element of practicality, there's an excellent analogy that I've been using in my life, which is W-A-I-T. Credit to Joseph Goldsteins once again for showing me this one, but why am I talking? W-A-I-T. Whenever you're about to talk in a social situation, ask yourself, why am I talking? Is it meaningful? Is it adding to the conversation? Or is it just saying, here I am, notice me, notice me, notice me? So this is not easy and takes quite a strong amount of mindfulness to be able to cultivate. So if we can treat it as an object of meditation, it will certainly help our practice. So to wrap skillful speech up, the last element that we can look at is the way in which we say things. So the Buddha wasn't advocating for us just to be completely mindful of ourselves, but also externally, to other people. So with that in mind, the way in which we say things, our tone of voice and emotional tone, has huge implications for our mindful practice. So again, in the element of practicality, what is something we can do in this situation? Now, again, this is incredibly difficult. Like, by no means is this an easy task, but here's my challenge to you. The next time you're in an argument and someone's, having a go at you, even if they're throwing in that you're completely justified, because we're always justified in our defense, right? Try and not raise your voice. Use a sort of relaxing tone of voice when communicating back with this person. And I encourage you to see what happens when you do this. From my experience, what I've noticed, if someone's having a go at me and yelling at me, if I'm able to come back from a place of compassion and speak back to them with a calmer voice, instantly their levels of anger subside right down to a level where we're still able to communicate what we're angry about, but on a much more pragmatic level. And what I think you'll notice is that it will lead to a lot more cohesion between you, and you're actually going to get somewhere with an argument rather than defending and defending and defending. Now, by no means is this an easy task, but a powerful way that we can deepen mindfulness is being more present externally to just ourselves as well. So what's in it for us? If we put in all these tips into deepening our mindfulness, Joseph Goldsteins says that, especially with skillful speech, we cultivate abstinence from unwholesome mind states, give expression to the beautiful motivations of loving kindness, compassion and altruistic joy, and more importantly, align ourselves with what is true. So, take a stand in implementing the two practical tips that I've given you today: continuity of mindfulness and skillful speech. When we take a stand in skillful speech, we take a stand in reality. It takes courage, it's not easy. And same with continuity of mindfulness, these things take practice. But what you need to do is put some actionable steps into place if you really want to reap benefit from it. So take the 10 minutes per day to set the intention of being mindful, or the next time you're in an argument, set the intention that you're not going to raise your voice at the other person. See what happens, and make the commitment to telling the truth and not using useless speech. And I'm sure what you'll find is your mindfulness practice will skyrocket. We live in a world where there's unlimited self-help content out there, but I really encourage you to take what I've given you today and put it into your practice for the benefit of yourself, but also for others around you. Okay, thanks so much for listening to the video today, everyone. As I said, this is actually part one of a series that I'll be doing on the Satipatthana Sutta, so there's more of this to come. So if you want to see more videos like this, definitely subscribe. You'll gain a lot of value, I can assure you. But until next time, I will see you in the next video. Bye now.